Let me see. This is podcast number 6. So, all right, welcome. We are doing another KDLcast Book Talk podcast, and this is the 6th one that we're doing, and we're doing kind of a special one today. We decided to do another genre podcast, so we're going to be doing all sci-fi fantasy books. It seems like sci-fi and fantasy is kind of leaked into a lot of the other podcasts we've done anyway, so we're going to do just a total blowout of only sci-fi fantasy. So we have sci-fi fantasy geeks and librarians here talking to us. So we're going to do a quick around the room and say who we are, and then we're going to jump in talking about a bunch of books and stuff. So I'm Kip O'Dell, an adult librarian at the Granville Library.
I'm Josh Bernstein, Granville Library Branch Manager.
I'm Sarah Mahoney. I am an adult parapro at the Wyoming branch.
Awesome. So also want everyone to remember that we keep track of everything that we talk about, that we mention in all of the books. So you can follow a catalog link on the podcast page, and all of these are at kdl.org/KDLcast. And again, this is our 6th one. So we're going to jump in and talk about, we seem to have accidentally a well-rounded selection of books and stuff like that. So I'm starting with one that I have not read in a very long time. Have either of you read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern?
I tried.
Oh, no. Well, Night Circus seems to be hit or miss, is what it seems like to me. My wife was telling me about it for years, and I find, when someone tells you to read something, you don't do it because you feel like you have to do it. And then I finally read it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I think it is awesome. So
it's been on my list for a long time, so maybe you'll convince me today.
I tried to read it. It's not my brand of fantasy.
So in this book, The Night Circus, there's a few things going on. Basically, The Night Circus is a circus that pops up, and you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know where. It's sort of kind of like a regularly occurring thing, but it will just suddenly show up in your town. There will be tents outside of town, and everybody attends the circus. And it is just this incredibly magical circus, so much so that you don't know how the people are actually pulling off all of the tricks and the illusions and things that they're doing. So it's this really neat, kind of cool thing. I don't usually read little portions, but the start of the jacket is: the circus arrives without warning. No announcements precede it. No paper notices plastered on lampposts and billboards. It is simply there when yesterday it was not. So that's how the circus works, and it's known as this legendary thing. Meanwhile, we have kind of these shadowy figures behind the scenes that both have an apprentice magician, because you learn very early in the book that the circus really is magic. It's not just really awesome illusionists and stuff like that. So these two shadowy figures basically make a bet, and they want to pit their two proteges against each other.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, what else are you supposed to do with proteges?
Yeah.
And it
feed them to the wolves.
Into this couple decade long thing where this young man and young woman are both going against each other, trying to create the biggest and the greatest and the craziest attractions at the circus. And they don't necessarily, this part gets kind of hard to explain, they don't necessarily know that they're pitted against each other. They don't even know how to win. Nonetheless, they are battling against each other as their lives go. And of course, they also then end up meeting each other, Celia and Marco, but also falling in love. So that is another sort of part of the book, is that they then, as they start to realize what is happening to them, how are they going to react on it? And it is fascinating. I love it.
Okay.
Cool.
Are there any books that you've read that are similar to that? I'm trying to put my finger on something that I've read before that sounds like that, but I can't really think of it.
Yeah, I don't know that I've read something real similar. It's definitely if you like the magic part of Harry Potter, and you and want to read an adult book. I have not read Lev Grossman's The Magicians.
I was going to say, it's like that one with, what is it, Christian Bale or something? That one movie?
Oh, yeah. I'll have to look that up. It is like that.
Where they're constantly fighting each other and trying to one-up each other in their illusions, but they're actually using magic. It's a movie.
The
Prestige,
yes.
Yeah.
The Prestige, yeah.
Okay.
Sounds similar.
Yeah, it's definitely similar to that, and it's it's a real kind of, it's not as intense as a lot of like fantasy magic books are, but because it takes place,
it's not as much world building kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then you find out what happens when you end up like kind of outside of the circus, because again it's this thing that just sort of like magically pops up in different places. And, it's super interesting, and I think that's the best way I kind of say it, is if you like the Harry Potter magic sort of situation. And there's another book like that too that I'm kind of blanking on at the moment. But
yeah, it's interesting. It sounds like it kind of takes a fairly standard fantasy trope of some sort of special occurrence that just randomly happens and people know about, that this happens places, but you just randomly luck into it or you don't. That's kind of a fairly common thing, but takes it from a different perspective of the people inside of that occurrence, that are causing it or whatever, rather than the people who are chasing it or trying to, who stumble upon it or whatever.
Right.
And Morgenstern is very, very good at describing it. I mean, that's really where the book is good, is that you pretty much believe all of the magical stuff about the book. That's
has good description
in the book. Just because it's so well written. It does seem to be a hit or miss book with people. It either clicks with people or it doesn't. Because I've had a couple people tell me both ways, that they love it or they're like, I didn't really want to push through it. But
I mean, I would still recommend it to people if it sounds interesting
really
to you. It's just I have very specific tastes.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't grab me, I just don't finish it.
Okay.
So that's the Night Circus.
What else has she written? Because that's the only one I've heard of.
That's the only one I've heard of too.
Just curious if that was her first book or if it's
we'll have
just
to look it up and see, because I'm feeling like she's one of those people that you wonder why they haven't written another book. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
we'll stay tuned. Well, I'll move to my first book of the day, a book called Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Kip, I know you've read it, and it sounds like, Sarah, you started to read it and couldn't get into it. So
it makes me sound so bad that I just pick up books and discard them. I don't. Not that often.
This one, so I'll make the case that this is one of the most fun books you could ever read, but it is also hit or miss, I think, largely by when you grew up and whether or not the 80s and 90s, especially that pop culture, was like a big time for you or not.
I was born in the 90s, so it's not really as much for me.
Right. See, I was born early 80s, so late 80s and early 90s pop culture, like that was my, I don't know, the fire that I was hardened in as far as pop culture fame. So we'll get into that. But Ready Player One is a great, more sci-fi style book by Ernest Cline. It was his first book, but he also did some movies and stuff. I think he was either the writer or producer, I can't remember, of that Star Wars fan movie about the kids traveling across the country to go to Lucas Ranch.
Oh, yeah.
I'm spacing on the name of that, too. But
it's a fun movie.
It is pretty fun.
That,
it's just kind of like geek fun. But so this is a book that takes place in the year 2044. And it takes place in a future where, some trends that we see now have gotten much worse. The haves and the have-nots, not taking care of our world. So it's almost like a dystopic future, but where basically there's tons of slums and the world is a pretty crappy place except for some really nice cities where all of the people that are in these big businesses live and, have their money and work. But even there's a lot of seedy underbelly stuff and just kind of a few nice little pockets. So it's not a great world to live in. But most people at this point don't care because most people don't spend their time in the real world. Most people spend their time in the Oasis. The Oasis is a virtual reality world where pretty much everybody lives. Most people have whatever their access point is at home, whether it's a full, I believe they call them haptic rig, where you have a full suit that actually you can sense everything going on in the world, or whether or not you just have kind of a headset and keyboard and hand gesture controls. But
sounds like a lot of anime that's coming out lately.
Yeah. Like
Summer Wars and Sword Art Online.
Right. Well, and with like Oculus Rift and stuff, we're getting to be able to see this as more of a potential future reality. But so people pretty much, that's where they live their life. They interact with most people they know through the Oasis. They pretty much leave it to get food. And some people maybe have their food come straight to them while they're doing this. But so kids go to school through the Oasis, especially kids in neighborhoods like where Wade Watts, our main character, lives, because he's very poor and he lives basically in a 2044 version of a trailer park where trailers are stacked on top of each other 10 or 12 high, and it's like
shipping containers.
Yeah, it's like shipping containers, but they're kind of like just small, less than desirable homes stacked on top of each other, with another stack 10 feet that way, and he lives way up in one of them and has to kind of climb up there every day. But
wow.
he actually goes to school through the Oasis. He has his little hideaway where he goes, and he has his computer stuff, and he goes to school there. So it's kind of a weird world, and it's all lived online. You can picture the Oasis as kind of like Second Life, but way more modern and awesome. Say what you will about Second Life. This sounds way better.
I forgot about Second Life. That's a thing I forgot.
This is like Second Life if technology got way better and we kept like moving in that direction instead of just having that be kind of a blip for however long it was. But all right, so people live their life in there. The Oasis was created by a guy named James Halliday. I think it was James. Yeah, James Halliday. And James, like myself, grew up in the 80s and 90s, and that's where his fandom comes from. And so this Oasis, it's not just one world. There are worlds for everything throughout. I mean, you can get spaceships to fly around in there. You can move around however. And when James died, he basically said, my fortune and control of the Oasis will go to somebody who can solve these puzzles. And he left behind this elaborate puzzle game. But nobody knows what it is. They just know that there's some sort of puzzle somewhere in this vast universe that you need to find and solve. And people have been studying for many, many years James Halliday and all his obsessions, which were things like Dungeons and Dragons, 80s movies, John Hughes movies, early anime, music from that time. I think Rush was a big player in the book. So all that kind of stuff. And because they know that it's going to have something to do with some of these loves, a lot of early video games, especially arcade-style games like Space Invaders and stuff. And so there are worlds dedicated to this in there, and so everybody just spends countless hours trying to find where one of these puzzles is and how to solve it. And Wade, our main character, is one of those people who's been obsessed with it his whole life because he dreams of finding a way out of his crappy circumstances. And amazingly, he stumbles upon the first puzzle and solves it. And all of a sudden, the whole world is clued into this. And, of course, if one person can do it, a few others can do it, and there's a few more behind them. But there's big business behind this because the biggest business that controls a lot of stuff there right now wants to get control of the Oasis. And so they are willing to go to any means to get it. If they can't bribe Wade, they might try to kill Wade. So he's kind of
that's no good.
In a run for his life, trying to survive while he tries to spend most of his time in this fake world, real world inside the world, trying to solve all of these puzzles in a race to win. But really, it's just a great romp through sci-fi, fantasy, and pop culture of the 80s and 90s. If you like any kind of movie, music, or anything from that time period, you'll just be geeking out the whole time about it. So.
It is really packed with 80s references. You don't
Yes.
have to love or get all of the 80s references by any means, though it kind of helps. But I was doing a lot of Googling, which video game was that? Oh, right, then I see the screenshot or whatever and remember what the game was. So I did a lot of that while reading the book, but it's pretty fantastic.
Well, most of the time I was just geeking out, I want to play that. I want to do that.
Yeah,
that
I
sounds
know.
like fun. One of his... one of the things he needed to solve or do to earn one of his keys or something was basically he was put inside of one of Halliday's favorite John Hughes movies. I can't remember which one it was. I don't know if it was The Breakfast Club or what, but he just played the place of one of his characters. So he needed to know every line and the intuition and how to do it and where to go in this, in the movie, and he just had to act it out as if he was part of it the whole time while the other characters seemed like real characters around him. And
interesting.
Who doesn't want to do that? Who doesn't want to get thrown into whatever your movie was that you watched over and over again when you were 15? So,
and the side characters are well done too. They come into it sort of a little later, but they help sort of round out the whole thing. Are good. His movie, by the way, was Fanboys.
It
was just called Fanboys. Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I believe Steven Spielberg bought out the rights to make this movie. I don't know when it's coming. I forgot to look that up beforehand, but it's coming in the not too distant future. I remember reading about it a year
I've
ago.
heard the audiobook is good too. Will Wheaton does it.
Will Wheaton does it. So if you like sci-fi and nerdery in general, you already are a fan of Will Wheaton. So you get to listen to him read this. And Will Wheaton is talked about in this book regularly. because Will Wheaton is awesome.
Yes, he is.
So.
Talks about it all the time.
It's true. So, yeah, it's good. And his next book, Armada, is equally fun. It's more like a Space Invaders video games train you to really solve a crisis with aliens coming down. Kind of.
I like the movie The Last Starfighter, so I'm actually cautiously optimistic that I will like that book. I'll try not to throw it away.
There you go. Yep, it's good. I like Ready Player One better, but they're both like super entertaining.
Good. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do my first book, which is called Spiderlight by Adrian Chvosky. Yeah, like the composer. And this story is basically a take on the traditional quest to stop the Dark Lord trope. You've got a group of adventurers. There's a Dark Lord who's taken over the land, and they're trying to stop him. And the group is made up of Dion, who is the leader. She is like a cleric of the light, but she's kind of questioning her faith. Penthos, a wizard, who you're not sure if he's actually human, and he doesn't seem to quite get how humanity works, but he has a big crush on Dion, so he's helping just so he can, get some. There's Cyrene, who's a competent archer and warrior, but she's seen as less of a warrior because she's female. There's Heranthes, a knight of the light religion, and a misogynist who's trying to get in Cyrene's pants. And then there's Leaf, who's a thief who has more redeeming qualities than pretty much the entire band put together. But he's a thief, so everyone just assumes he's the bad guy. And the prophecy says that to get to the Dark Lord and defeat him, they need to take the spider's path. And people have been trying to figure that out for a while. And Dion decides that they need to go to this group of creatures of darkness, which are the giant spiders, kind of like Lord of the Rings giant spiders. They've got like a queen spider, and all the little ones are like Harry Potter with the giant spider. So they go to the queen of the spiders and all of her brood, and they basically force her to tell them where it is. They steal one of her mandibles, and she offers them one of her children and puts in its head where they have to go. So they take that spider with them. Penthos turns it into a humanoid, which is very creepy because it's still gray, it still has a spider's face, but they can't bring a giant spider with them where they're going because it'll stand out. And they all start out hating him because he's a creature of darkness. It's against what they're doing. But they start to see more and more that he's not necessarily just on the opposite side, that he has his own mind. And they basically get like really violent towards him and everything. And then Leaf decides he's going to start befriending him and seeing what's going on.
Gollum.
Yeah, like Gollum. It's pretty good. Also, they name him Enth because that's kind of the sound that he makes when it's his name. And Penthos, because he creates his new body, has mind control over him. So he has to do what the party says, which leads to some very interesting, like, guard versus prisoner mentalities where they can make him do things that he doesn't want to do. And so then they go on this adventure trying to figure out where they're going, if they actually trust him enough to take them where they need to go, and try and defeat the Dark Lord.
Okay. Huh. Before you get to the spider part, it was sounding very like Terry Brooks-like.
Yeah.
Is it stylistically similar to Shannara books?
I think
whatever?
so, yeah. Just very much like the traditional adventuring party, gonna go do this thing, but then I really like how it takes the characters and shows them as multifaceted. So they're a good guy, but they're also a jerk.
Right.
They don't really see women as, like, the one warrior decides that he's the big hero that everyone's waiting for, and he doesn't understand why women wouldn't like him. So he just assumes that every woman wants to get with him and that he has a right to have that. So then you hate him, and you're like, why is he here? But he's the guy who's going to help save the day. So I like how it sits everything kind of on its end, and you're actually cheering for the spider, who's a creature of darkness, rather than the people who are actually trying to help everybody. So,
who was the author again?
Adrian Chvosky.
I don't know that I've ever.
He has a couple other books. I haven't read them yet, but I read this book because it just came out in like August of last year, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it.
Is it going to be a series?
I don't believe so. It's complete. It's a standalone novel, so you don't have to like have a commitment or anything. He's written a couple other books. He's written some sci-fi books. I don't know if he's written much other fantasy, but I'm definitely planning on reading more of them. It's pretty good.
I just want to do a standalone fantasy because so many are parts of huge series now.
I know. It's like
almost hard to find something that's...
You want to read this because it's not a time commitment. You only have to read one book. You might as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now that's making me wish I picked a different one because I have one.
Do you?
That one...
Oh, yeah, right.
That we all read. The Newbery winner, but... Can't remember what it's called either, so go on.
All right, so my next one is called Ghost Talkers by Mary Robinette Kowal.
Ooh, I like that cover.
Yes, it's very good. So she's written a lot, and I haven't read her before. This is the first one. And I kind of accidentally stumbled into it because I'm pretty certain that I basically opened up the flap and read that it was about World War I, which I really like reading about that era. And so I'm like, well, alternative history, I'm in. I don't usually... read things that are sort of like that have like mediums and occultish stuff because that sort of creeps me out. But because I got hooked on the World War I just read it, and it's very, very good. So they basically it's about Ginger, who is an American, but she's working in near London during World War I because her fiance is a captain. So here's the sort of the twist of World War I. It's basically happening, it's Germany versus England, and it's the trench warfare. And her fiance is usually close to the front as a captain. But what they do is they have these women who are mediums, and they stay behind, of course, the lines a ways, kind of like the nurses did. It's kind of a similar vibe to that. But what they're actually doing is when any of the soldiers die, they quickly get like a few seconds to talk to the soldier. So the British soldiers are taught, if you are in trouble and you think you're going to die, make sure that you know like where you are, and you can tell this medium is going to talk to you quickly before you go on to wherever you're going on to, like where your position and stuff is. So they use it like strategically to figure out what the Germans are doing. So these mediums very quickly get to talk to them, and then in exchange for their information, they then also take the soldier can give them like one, like, oh, please tell my parents I love them, or something like that, like a parting wishes, like right before they die. And that's what they do. And you have this whole world where England is hiding that this exists because they don't think anyone else can do it, and they don't want the Germans to know that they have these mediums. So it's kind of shrouded in secrecy, and you even have some actual historical characters are just mentioned in the book. Like one of the people, like Houdini, is someone who keeps doing all of his like crazy tricks and stuff out to the people of England, so that no one believes. They're like, oh well, there is no magic, or there's no, none of these mediums. No one has this power. This is all just like trickery. So that's like his role in it, is to keep everyone assuming that it's just like sleight of hand kind of stuff.
Right.
But then here's the other part that kind of is the twist, is that near the beginning of the book, they do these shifts where they basically sit there and they're talking to soldier after soldier after soldier. One of the other women realizes that her fiance, Ginger's fiance, who is Benjamin, has died, and he has come up for them to talk to. However, a different thing happens with Benjamin, which is that since he was murdered from behind, so he can't see who killed him, as he was close to the lines, so it's like basically an enemy. He knows an enemy spy killed him, but he doesn't know who, and he actually won't move on to the other world quickly because he he basically has unfinished business. Apparently, that's kind of like a loophole. You can stay longer.
There's got to be a loophole.
Yeah, so that means Ginger and Benjamin actually get a little more time together, though it's as him being basically like a ghost type creature, and he kind of pops in and out, and his power, his ability to stay alive, though he's not really alive anymore, is waning. And basically they're trying to, while he can still help her figure out who the murderer is and figure out what the Germans know, they're racing against time to try to figure it out as quickly as they possibly can. So it's like in alt history, and it's a mystery because you're trying to figure out, who killed Captain Benjamin. It's a little bit of a romance, and then it's this kind of fantasy world. I loved it. I thought it was really, really good. I was surprised and happy that I pushed through when I realized it wasn't what I usually read, but it's really good.
Is it weird that it reminds me of Jim Butcher's Dresden Files? There isn't as many ghosts, but it is a fantasy. It's an urban fantasy that's also a mystery thing. It's got a detective wizard who's going around when people don't actually think wizards exist and solving people's problems.
Right.
And so it's interesting. Is that weird that reminds me of that?
No, I see the similarities.
No, I do too.
Well, and both are in London, right?
Oh, no, his is in Chicago.
Oh, why did I think he was in London?
Yeah, he's in Chicago. So...
And some of the alt history, like I like Harry Turtledove and some of them. I don't know if you've seen, but those are like these humongous.
Right.
We're getting back to those are like 600-page books in like a big series.
I want to read them, but they're intimidating.
Yeah,
they're good, but they're.
Yeah, I really like them, and he I don't know how he cranks out as many as he does. He really cranks them out. So this is like a fun alt history that you can like cruise right through, but it's really. Like,
there's another one that reminds me of. It's called Lady Tremir's Dragon, I think.
Oh, I don't know that one.
It's I think that's what it's called, and it's an alt history of the Napoleonic Wars, but with dragons.
Okay.
And it sounds really good.
Yeah, you have me.
Right. When you added dragons.
When you added dragons.
I was there.
Alt history dragons. I'm there, 100%. I have not read it personally, but I know someone who has, and they said it was a really good series.
That sounds good, too. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to love alt history as a kid. I read Harry Turtledove a lot then and kind of forgot about it. And recently, after watching the first season of Man in the High Castle, I'm like, I need to get back into alt history because it can be really cool. But sci-fi addition gets me
There's
closer.
more, I think. I think there's a little bit of a trend.
Yeah, I think it's coming back more.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really much my thing just because I don't really care about history as much as I do about like high fantasy. Okay. But I'm interested.
But just think about how much more interesting history would have been as a kid if it included things like dragons.
I mean, I'm
mediums
totally going to read that dragon, Napoleonic War book. I'm just not as much into like modern warfare, so like I don't really like reading necessarily about World War II and World War I, which is a lot of the focus I feel like in alt history.
It does seem like
So.
I will say Napoleon, the idea of Napoleon riding around on a dragon, this wee little man on a dragon, sounds awesome.
That is pretty awesome.
Very Dinah Reese of him.
Dinah Reese.
Well, my second book of the day is the first trade in a graphic novel or comic series called Saga by Brian K. Vaughan.
I love Saga.
And really, I brought this one not just because Saga's awesome, which it is, but because I just think Brian K. Vaughan, if I'm going to pick one sci-fi fantasy graphic novelist, he's the one to talk about. But
he does do a lot of good things.
But Saga itself, I think we now have like 7 or so trades at the library, and each trade is, 5-10 volumes of the comic.
Yeah.
Which we now have the regular comic of. So if I can ever catch up, I can start reading the actual comic each month as it comes out and not have to wait for a trade. But Saga is about 2 characters, Alana and Marco, that are different extraterrestrial races that have been in an intergalactic war for many years, and they were both soldiers in this battle. I don't remember the names of their peoples or races or whatever, but he is part of a group that's more kind of magic oriented, and he has ram's horns, and Alana has moth wings on her back, and I think she's more of a modern warfare kind of guns type technology race. But these 2 races have been at war for ages, and somehow or another these 2 meet and establish a relationship and fall in love. Very Romeo and Juliet of them. And she becomes pregnant with a little girl. And so this very first book, the very first comic, starts off with her giving birth to Hazel, their daughter. And so this series is basically about them trying to raise this girl in this world, well, this universe, because it's not just one planet, and trying to run from everybody to keep her safe, because of course even just the two of them being in a relationship is totally anathema to either of their species, and will be, so they have people after them, but it's considered a huge abomination that they had a child together. And so they aren't safe really anywhere. And so the first one is pretty much just them about them trying to escape from having this child and find a way to flee the planet they're on. And then the rest of the series, at least so far that I've gotten to, is just kind of this great grand space adventure of them flitting from planet to planet, trying to find a way to be safe while there are multiple people after them to kill them or capture them or whatever the case may be. It's kind of a weird mix of, I don't know, if you combine Star Wars with like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and threw in Romeo and Juliet and maybe even a little like Roald Dahl for the wackiness of these worlds that he creates, you'd have Saga.
There are some crazy races in there.
There are some crazy races, and that's half the fun. I mean, the main characters are great, and I love that a lot of graphic novel series do not have strong female characters for whatever reason, and this one does. It focuses kind of equally on both of the parents and a lot of other people. But yeah, the races are just totally crazy. One of the people after them is the king, or one of the princes of like this robot. These robot people that kind of rule over, I think, Alana's people in clan, and they basically just like humans, look like humans or regular humanoid type people, except instead of heads they have like, I don't know, TV screens that almost look like the old what was the Mac computers that were like rounded and colorful in the back. It's like that's what their heads are shaped like, and on the screen they can have a face or turn it off or whatever.
It like shows their emotions.
Yeah,
kind of,
It's so that's one race of people there. So that's one of the people. This prince of the robot race
Empire.
was tasked with going out and finding these people, and it's a dangerous job. And he just found out that he and his robot wife are going to have a little robot baby, so he's trying to solve this and prove himself, but also stay safe so he can get back to his family. And another person after them, sent by the other race, Marco's race, is some sort of bounty hunter type guy. I think his name is the Silk, maybe? Does that sound right?
It sounds right, but I'm not sure if it's 100%
and,
right.
He's after them, and he's got a cat that can tell when you're lying or something like that.
The lying cat,
It's just this world and universe and all the places they go to are so crazy, and it's just so much fun. I don't know. You guys have both read it as well. What are your
it's
thoughts?
awesome. The world building is crazy.
I love
it's very,
it.
very good.
I just love the diverse characters. Like you said, there's strong female characters. I love the fact that all of the bad guys you feel sympathy for at some point or another. So if any of them like die or in their dire circumstances, you are sad that they're gone because they have someone who cares about them.
Yeah, there's no clear good guys or bad guys. I mean,
Right.
You obviously are rooting for these main characters, but even the people after them, everybody's bad to some extent because there are these two races that are fighting, and at least at this point, we don't fully know why. They've just always been doing it. So,
it's gotten out of hand at that point.
Doesn't mean they're all bad. They're just in this horrible war. So, it's interesting. But the key to me is that Brian K. Vaughan is the best. I started with Brian K. Vaughan. Little known fact, Kip and I went to library school together.
Yeah.
And one of our first group projects was together in 2006, where we did a project for a young adult lit class on Brian K. Vaughan.
Yep.
At that point, we were obsessed with him mostly just because of his early comic, The Runaways, which was great.
I have read that. It is good.
And Ex Machina? Was that the other one
I
out
think
then?
that
or
was
Why
probably
the Last Man?
the
I
other
don't
one
know.
out.
The Last
I
Man,
think
Why the Last Man?
Why
Yeah.
the Last Man? Yeah.
Yeah. Have you read that one?
I have. It's that's also
I
really
love Why
good.
the Last
Pretty
Man.
much everything I've read of his, I've liked.
Yep.
So, and this one's like a culmination of everything he's been doing. It's so good.
He's one of those guys, we were talking about him yesterday. I don't know how he keeps coming up with his ideas. There are people that write prolifically and maybe have something out every year or whatever, but they may be in a series or same style. Every one of his is just a totally different idea, and they're so off the wall that when you begin conceiving of them, you got to think that's just ridiculous. But as he fleshed it out and made it its own world, it's just great.
Somehow, like you mentioned, Y the Last Man, I did not realize until this moment that he had written that as well. I just remember reading it, and I'm like, how did the person who writes Saga write that one? They're both really good, but they're not similar.
No,
So
not
if you
in any way,
didn't
shape,
tell
or
me
form.
that, I would not have guessed.
And they're both great. Have you read Ex Machina?
I have not.
Also really good and very completely different from either.
I will have to. I'm just basically going to go home and look at his entire book series, like all of his books, and then just read all of them.
Yep.
Go on Hoopla and just find all of them.
Yep. I could be pretty happy with just comics from Brian K. Vaughan or Robert Kirkman for the rest of my life. That would be enough for me because they're both so prolifically good. But so yeah, that's Saga.
And I think his latest, not counting Saga, that he's working on is that The Private Eye. Have you seen that? That was like a web. He did it on the web. And then they published
Like a webcomic?
they published it like a year and a half ago, and it's kind of like an odd-sized book because they wanted to mimic how it looked on the screen, so
Right.
it's kind of like long. But that's another totally like futuristic. It's where the internet actually people decide they hate it basically because everyone's information, anything that anyone has ever done on the internet becomes completely public.
Oh,
So
God.
they actually shut down the internet, and then
I don't blame them at that point.
And then people's all their lives have been like their identities are sort of out there, right? So everybody wears mask. Like every person on the planet just like wears mask, and it's about this actual like private investigator.
What is it
kind of
called?
living. It's called The Private Eye.
Right.
I need to read this
too.
like immediately.
Kind of
Yeah.
sounds like The Circle, but they took a totally different path after
Yeah.
everybody's info got out there.
Yeah, and once again, inventive, and you're like, oh yeah, maybe that is. And there's an awesome character, like an old. It's I think it's the main character's grandpa, but he's like in his 70s or 80s. But he lived during the internet, and he can't not like.
Does he talk in lead speak?
Get over the fact that the internet's gone. So he's like, why can't I get music on my iPod? And his son's just like, no, that doesn't work anymore. Like trying to be patient with him. Like, remember the internet's gone. So it's awesome.
So he starts talking about YOLO and Grandpa, we don't say YOLO anymore.
Like the reverse of
Yeah,
now, where you're
and
trying
you're
to
on
tell
it
your
'cause he
grandparents
does
what the internet is and how to use it.
Yeah.
You're like, the internet was great.
It's totally
gonna be
Lead
with my
speak it
grandkids.
up.
the flip of that, and to people think that the internet's terrible because of what happened. So it's the younger
Right.
people like, no, that was terrible. Why did you even
Why
go
would you
on
even do
that
that?
thing? Yeah, so it's pretty hilarious.
That's hilarious.
But
It is pretty
it's
great.
very good.
You just can't go wrong with Brian K. Vaughan.
Right. I think it's my turn
Oh yeah, it is
because we got off track on Saga.
Yeah.
My next one is called Viscera by Gabriel, I can't pronounce his last name well, Squalia. This is very much like, this is a dystopian fantasy in a world that if you're squeamish, you might not want to read this book. It's got a lot of body horror in it, but I wouldn't, if you can handle it, it's very good. It takes place in a world where there used to be these giant gods who ruled everything, but they're dead now, and their organs have calcified, and people mine their organs for power and use it to power things, to use it for magical purposes. So, like, different cities have built up around these corpses of the gods, which are giant, like huge. And people are starting to, because that happened, the world is now desolate. Everyone's at war with each other. And they, this kind of all comes together. It's a similar, like, there's a group, but rather than they're all trying to save the world, they're all just basically trying to survive. A couple of them have a thing they're trying to do in one of the cities that it revolves around, getting the calcified organs. Some of them use it as like a drug. So there are like junkies who bring in organs. That's one of the main stories. Is one of the main characters, Rafe. She's got Rafe. He has like mysterious chest pains and takes all of these drugs, and they need to bring organs they find organs and they bring them to this guy called the Puppeteer. and then they get drugs. So it starts off with Rafe finding this girl named Ashlyn, and he and his partner like smash her over the head and like steal her organs and then run away. But then she wakes up, starts regenerating her organs, and then just walks away. She didn't even fight because she knows she's just going to get up. She's very unusual. And then the fact that she can always regenerate, kind of like a Wolverine type thing. Even if her organs are all completely removed, she just grows them back. And she's traveling with a puppet made out of animated cloth and guts called Hollis. And he's very, he's very disrespectful and just kind of doesn't care. He wants to cut people up. He hates everyone except her because she just keeps coming back and he can't kill her, so he might as well just stick with her. And then once those people kind of get thrown together, they come in contact with this nature goddess / mad scientist called Tonka. And she's great. She lets on that she knows kind of why Ashlyn is the way she is, and she figures out what Rafe's secret is, and so she kind of all throws them together and makes them do what she wants to do. And I can't really say much more without like massive spoilers, but if any of that sounds interesting to you, it's really good. It's another standalone novel.
Okay.
So it's only one book. And it's got lots of twists and turns in it. The world is just crazy. Like there's a whole clan of people who have to bury the bodies that they find in a very specific way, and they're like a clan, and they're creepy as all get out, and everyone just doesn't like them. They're like kind of like untouchables type thing, but everyone needs them because if they don't get their body buried by them, then they don't get to move on to the next world. It's just crazy stuff like that. Basically, everyone's stealing each other's organs and getting high. And it's great.
What a world.
What a world. It's a crazy ride, but it's a lot of fun. And it is funny in some parts, but like I said, if you can't handle like descriptions of body horror, I would stay away from this book.
The initial premise of the gods and their organs and the power and stuff reminded me instantly of Guardians of the Galaxy and that giant, space giant skull that they have like a colony in where they're mining the brain matter or something for whatever purpose we don't really know.
Yeah.
But
it is very important to the story, but it doesn't take like center stage.
Okay.
It's kind of more of a backdrop and like a incentive why everyone's kind of starting out. But the puppeteer is basically the main focus. Who he is, what he's doing. Hollis really wants to kill him because he thinks he made him and he doesn't want to live, but he also doesn't want to die. So
it's a real double-edged sword right there.
Yeah. Straight up double side of the coin. I don't want to live, but I don't want to die. I'm just going to kill the person who made me because screw that guy. So
because that's great.
Yeah, they're really colorful personalities, and the world is just kind of crazy, but it all fits together really well in some weird way. So I love it. And I think this is this person's first book that he wrote. So I really enjoyed it.
Cool.
Awesome.
I like weird standalone novels.
All right, I'll do my last. This is a standalone too. We have like a sub-theme to our... This is by Christopher Farnsworth. It is called Kill File. He's written one or two others, but this is the only one I've read by him. It is very good. This is more like a fast-moving adventure type sci-fi book. Okay. Basically, this is about a guy who just goes by John Smith, and he has basically a special power, which is he can read people's minds. He knows what everybody is thinking. So he's kind of worked this into a career. You learn through the book that he had a very military background, and that comes into the story. But basically, he's used that to do like special jobs for millionaires. So he's almost like clandestine services type of a thing that he can get things done because he always knows what everybody is thinking around him. And his goal in life is to basically go away and be on his own island that he owns by himself because he's always hearing people's thoughts, and it's like driving him bonkers. Basically, that this is just something that he can't get away from. He can't control other people, but he can kind of give suggestions to other people and sort of confuse and throw people off. So he's practically unkillable because he knows what you're thinking. That kind of
like
thing.
A Dr. X type of thing.
Yeah.
Professor X.
Yeah.
From X-Men.
A bit of a Professor X. Yeah, he can't totally control like Professor X can like other people's, but he's always knowing what everyone's thinking and doing.
But the trade-off is he can walk. That's
Yeah.
Right, that's the bonus. So what happens though is that he goes into this job like he usually does. So there's a rich guy who owns a tech company in California. His name is Everett Sloan, and Everett had one of his people under him. He is claiming take a bunch of the tech that they were working on and has started his own country. So John Smith and the assistant Kelsey that works there too are going to go and basically try to pull the secrets from this guy's head. So you just basically make suggestions and the person will start thinking about those things, and then you can like steal the information. So
does
that's,
his assistant kind of have mind juju
no,
too? Okay.
Nope. So that's kind of the goal. She gets kind of caught up in the whole thing basically. So that's what they meant to do. So they go to this very like Silicon Valley resort kind of a thing where they're having like a little conference, and he is able to get this underling in an office, mostly alone with just like a couple of guards, and the guy quickly like brings up on the computer John Smith's information, and somebody sends him a thing that says you have to have your guy kill this guy right now. So John Smith walks into a situation, thinks he's about to get paid like lots of money and get his own island. That's what he's promised, that he can finally like move away, and suddenly these guards are like jumping on him trying to kill him, and he has to get out of there as quickly as he can.
Oh, snap.
He also doesn't realize, so him and Kelsey end up going on the run because they're again trying to kill them so no one knows what's going on. He doesn't realize though that this Silicon Valley guy Everett can find out like all of the accounts he has all over the world with little bits of money in it. He just completely like wipes the guy off the map, knows everything about him, and he's coming after John Smith with his guys. So that's basically the rest of the book is John Smith trying to protect himself and Kelsey, and get back at this guy who's now trying to kill him because he has information that he shouldn't have.
So is this like a R type of world where everyone's kind of normal and he just has a very specific thing? It's not like a lot of people can do like ESP type stuff.
Nope, and it makes one little historical like reference in there, so you kind of get the impression that like this happens on a super rare basis.
Okay.
And so I kind of assumed, I'm not ruining anything, but I kind of assumed, somebody else is going to come with his power, right? And that never happens. It's something that's like it's a rare thing, and he has a special power. And there's a lot of flashbacks because the military would like him back, and you kind of learn how he developed his power, how he was. Think of being like a teenager and having this power, you'd be a real jerk, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would have been for sure. So that's kind of like how he grows up, and he ends up getting in the military. The CIA realizes what his powers are, and they let him go, but they're always trying to get him back. So that's kind of the subplot to this.
Well, that's nice of them.
So like who does he trust basically?
Yeah.
He has no one to trust, and again,
you think he would be able to know who to trust because
Yeah,
he has
Well, that's a good point.
I think it would all end
powers.
really quick because you would just know.
But I guess
I'll listen to
maybe-
you and
I guess
you,
he
but-
he knows what they're thinking,
maybe
but
there's a range on it.
yeah,
something?
like what everyone's plans are behind the scenes, he doesn't always know.
Yeah,
that,
like how were they able
so.
to set him up to begin with?
Maybe they had people
That's-
thinking really
yeah,
hard
or maybe-
about
yeah.
not. You
Yeah.
think you'd be able to tell if someone's
Interact with
basically
somebody
saying
else
the
or
same
something.
thing over and over in their head. Yeah.
The name of the book, as the kill file comes through on the laptop, he
Oh, that's
notices the guy reading it, by reading his mind. So he actually, that's how he gets away at the beginning of the book.
He realizes, he's like, this person's reading like I killed John Smith, and he's like, oh no, I gotta get out of here.
Exactly. So he always has like a few second lead
Okay.
on, and he can do kind of like horrible, because he can take like terrible memories and kind of throw them at people. Like, so if you go after him,
he can inject his own thoughts into your mind.
He can do terrible things to you. I mean, he can't make you do stuff, but he can like ruin your day pretty good, right? By these terrible like feelings or whatever, and
can
then
he
people
do crazy like
people
judo because
react.
like he can tell what people are gonna do.
Pretty much,
second.
yes.
Cool.
That's yep.
Sorry to cut you off. I was just curious.
Well done. Kind of following the how it works, but it's really good. I really liked it. I blew right.
I like
through
the
it
concept
and liked it. It almost reminded me of like the world of like The Circle.
Right.
Where you have like this tech stuff like taking over and all of that, but then the part that's totally different is John Smith is just this crazy awesome former military
guy. Can he cut it off? He can't cut it off, right?
No,
he can't
correct.
like shield his mind or anything.
No,
it wouldn't need a private island.
That's what I was saying my question, and I was like, wait, I completely answered my own question, but I'm gonna just go with it for the audience.
He can't turn it off, which is why his dream is just like he just wants to get
middle
away.
of nowhere.
Right. Yeah,
nobody talk to me.
I'd be pretty happy on a private island without that.
Yes,
although I'd want people
anyway.
there with me, friends, family, or whatever,
so that would make it.
He wants no one.
Doubly cool
In video games, yeah. Set me up with
awesome
a Switch, and I'm good.
I'll have to add that to my read list. I think you told me about that once before and kind of took it with the Circle stuff, and then I looked it up, and we didn't have an audiobook of it, which is
sounds
what I
very
needed
high octane
at the time. So
it's good. Yeah,
maybe I'll have somebody get us an audiobook.
I'll put it on my to-read list, which is like 500 books long.
We all have humongous
ones.
Exactly.
I'll put it on the back burner.
Yep. And that list is on here, so a lot of it falls away quickly.
Put it on Goodreads so I don't forget.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go in a totally different direction from what we've been doing with my last book. It's much more traditional style, like fantasy, and it's youth. We've had a lot of very truly adult books between CIA murder stuff, Saga, which is about as adult as it gets, even though it's great, and body horror.
Body horror.
So I'm going to go with one that is, we actually have it in our J section, but it is just so much fun that I think anyone of any age would love this book.
I've been meaning to read that forever.
So it is the first book in what's now called the Magisterium series, co-written by Holly Black and Cassandra Clare, both fairly well-known YA authors. Mm-hmm. And this first one is called The Iron Trial. And so basically this whole series almost sounds like a ripoff of the Harry Potter series because it shares so much with it, but it's so different. Still, and it basically is the perfect follow-up to Harry Potter. If you missed that fun world, this is a new world that shares enough similarities to be like really fun, but feels different. It's about a boy who's, 11 or 12 years old, named Colum Hunt. Colum Hunt lives in our world, normal, regular world, but in that world, the mages exist. Basically the same concept as witches and wizards, except in this world their magic is based more on the elements, their ability to control the elements. In fact, their big saying that he learns in a little while, kind of the way the mages talk about their magic, is fire wants to burn, water wants to flow, air wants to rise, earth wants to bind, and chaos wants to devour. And so mages have the ability to control some or all of these elements, although those that control chaos are very special. And we learn more.
And then there's the Avatar.
And then there's the Avatar. So it's about Colum Hunt. Colum Hunt's father had been a mage, and something happened when Colum was an infant that resulted in the death of his mother. And his father basically blames mages and all of the wars and battles that they're always causing between each other, and is basically sworn off the magic world. And so Colum grew up with his father somewhere on the East Coast. I don't remember where exactly, but knowing that magic exists, but always being told that like mages are awful and you should stay away from it, and going to a regular school, and most people don't know anything about this world unless you're part of it.
Okay.
So.
That was going to be my next question.
He, because of whatever happened when he was a kid, he's always had a horrible limp. One of his legs barely works.
Oh, no.
And so he's always caused pain and trouble, and he hasn't got along well with kids kind of as a result of being different. Mm-hmm. But in this world, if you have any magical ability, whether you are born to magical parents or not, you get an invite, much like being invited to Hogwarts, to the Iron Trial when you're whatever the age level is. I can't remember.
Sounds kind of scary.
About 11th-ish or so. And you have to go to this Iron Trial, and if you can demonstrate your abilities in there, you will be accepted to go to the Magisterium, which is basically their magic school that's deep in cave system underneath. Under the ground, I think in like rural Virginia or something like that.
Where no one would guess.
So, and that's where you train and you learn about your magical abilities. And so, of course, Cullum is invited to go to the Iron Trial. But because he thinks mages and magic is the worst thing ever, he is going to go and do everything he can to fail the trial. He's basically trying to fail every one of the tests that they give him there. And despite failing in epic ways without even his intent, because... it's hard to explain, but it's just hilarious how this whole trial goes. He ruins everything. He ends up being selected nonetheless and isn't allowed to choose not to go. I mean, once you're selected, you're going. And so he is selected not just to go, but to be the mage or apprentice with two other kids that did the best in the trial, to be the apprentice to Rufus, Master Rufus, who is the most well-known of all the mages. So this is about his time. This basically follows the first year, the Iron Year in the Magisterium. It is so interesting, and it shares so much that I loved about the Harry Potter world of 2 or 3 kids, best friends. I mean, it really sounds very similar. It's him and these other 2 students and their first year at magic school of what I think is going to be 5 years, but I'm not sure yet. But the magic, the style of magic and the characters themselves and the school and the world they're in is just so vastly different that it's fresh and new, but maintains that fun, youthful, just excitement of Harry Potter. I couldn't put it down. I loved it the second I tried it, and then picked up. There's now 3 of them. The 4th one comes out, I think, August-ish, later this summer. Hopefully they can get the 5th one, which I'm hopeful is the final one, done soon, so I can get to the end, because I hate it when I'm in a series that stops. But it's fantastic. Once you start it, you won't want to put it down.
So are they like friends, or like they rivals? Like they're all competing for
There's a lot to that. They start as rivals in this trial because they don't know each other, and he doesn't want to go, and they do, and they can't understand that. But they're thrown together as apprentices and almost instantly are best friends, much like
nice.
Ron and Hermione and Harry. But there's a lot more to who they are and who the bad guy or what's going on there.
Like, is there a Voldemort?
And their abilities, sort of. There's a bad guy who was kind of the result of this war that was happening when he was an infant.
Okay.
Who is still around. He is one of the chaos magicians, one of the few that can do that.
So the chaos magicians are kind of the bad guys?
Yes and no. They are extremely powerful and have the ability to do horrible things.
Are there any in the school?
To battle a Makar, which is the kind of person that can use the chaos, you can only do that with another Makar or Makari.
Oh.
And so that plays a whole thing into this year because there hasn't been another one since the good guys, Makari, Angel or Angela Perez, died in this earlier war battling the bad guy Makari.
Okay.
And so they've been wanting to find a new one, and so that's all there.
Train them for the good side.
And there's a whole lot of different, stuff going on with these kids and whether or not they, being a Makari or doing things like that, whether or not that makes you bad or good. So there's a lot to it, and I think a lot more they get to a lot more darkness of the main characters or potential for darkness than do the Harry Potter books, although that's there too, obviously, with Harry.
Right. It doesn't get until the later books,
though. So this starts there earlier, but it's hard to show how different it is from those books because it sounds very similar, but it really is very different, but it maintains all the joy of the Potter books.
Now I just want to read it even more. It's been on my list, like I said, forever. Now I have to read it.
Yeah, me too.
But I want to wait so that the next book comes out.
If you can hold off for another year or two until she's done, then go for it.
I don't know if I can.
Start it now and then reread it each time. The audiobooks are good too. I listened to this one again on audio when I had my last.
Are they all that short, or are they like Harry Potter where they significantly get bigger?
No,
each
they're
time?
all in the 300, 280 to
good.
350.
The last book's not going to be like 600
so
to 700 pages.
They could jump up, but I think the whole thing stays a little bit younger. Not necessarily in its tone, but in its kind of reading level. And
so they're not also like Harry Potter, where like the ones later get into like young adult territory.
So far, they're all,
Like
we catalog
teen?
them all in the J section.
Okay.
And I think they're all aimed at a younger age than the later Harry Potters, but they're getting much darker.
Right.
Not necessarily older, but it is getting a little creepier, and there's more depth of, what is good, what is bad, that kind of stuff.
The gray
so
area.
it's feeling a little older in theme, but so far I'd still say it's a, it's a good upper elementary, but maybe middle school age read.
Okay, cool.
Minus the school, it reminds me a bit of Skullduggery Pleasant.
Yes.
Where the
actually,
young
it has a
girl
lot
is
of
thrown into
similarities
the
to that,
magical
too.
world.
I wanted to
and-
read that too.
Ooh, I
That looks
really
good.
like
Skullduggery Pleasant rules.
That's in the
the
teen
first one
section,
is
though, right?
awesome. That is in
It
the
is.
teen section.
Okay.
That one's one that's kind of on the border. I feel like.
I just love the covers.
There's a
Like
lot
I
of-
see those covers, and they're
Yeah.
so cool with just the guy with the skull, and you're like, I want to see that guy.
I never read any of the others to that series because they were only published in England originally, right? Like you couldn't get them out of the UK.
Yeah, it took a
At least
while.
when the first one was out.
I did eventually read the second one. It's good. It's more fun. That was more like the world building and all
Right.
that was so much fun that I didn't like the second one as much. But I do know some people who really read all through, and there's a bunch of them. I don't remember,
Is
5
there?
or 6. But
I don't know if
the
I can
first one
commit
was so
to another
good.
series.
I love
man.
the first one.
Got so many.
Those do read fast, probably like Iron Trial.
Yeah, these
it
read
seems like
fast
they do
too.
too.
I mean, this is
Yeah.
you can, if you're a big reader and you sit down for longer reading sessions, you could probably do this in 3 or 4 good. It's not quite 300 pages, and it's used. So
I've been trying to read more novellas so I can get through more
Oh.
more books. one-
that's right, the reading challenge. Yeah,
Yes,
trying to-
I'm trying to read 250 books this year between manga, graphic novels, and stuff. I just read one. I don't know if I can go off on this side
for
tangent
it.
for a second. It's called Every Heart a Doorway. It's similar to kind of like Miss Peregrine's School for Peculiar Children, where basically it's kind of like some children go through doorways to different worlds, kind of like Alice in Wonderland. There's all these different worlds, and then when they come back, they're so different that their parents don't know what to do with them. So they get sent to this boarding school that helps them cope with the fact that they probably won't be able to go back, because all of them see their home as the place that they went, and for some reason or another they've been kicked out of their world for breaking some kind of rule, or because they want to make sure that they want to stay there, and every child is trying to get back but they can't. So this one older woman who is one of those children as well opens up the school and tries and helps them cope with the facts. And there are some worlds that are high nonsense, some that are high logic, some that there's ones that are made of bubble gum and candy, and some that's reminiscent of like a Dr. Frankenstein world. So high wicked and stuff like that. So it's really good, and it kind of reminded me of it just because.
Is that teen or adult?
It is adult.
Okay.
It's not like graphic in any way. There's just a lot of like themes, and there's some like murder and stuff like that. But it is really good. It's like maybe 152 pages. I highly recommend it. I just finished it the other day. It's really good.
That sounds good.
So yeah.
Cool.
You want to do your last one?
My last one, I got
All right.
off on a tangent. Another book talk for you guys. Hey. My last one is also a graphic novel, kind of like Saga. It's called Alex plus Ada. I've got all of them here. It's just 3 volumes contained, because I like my stuff to be contained, as we have seen. And it is a sci-fi. It is about, it's set in the near future, where artificial intelligence has been achieved. There are androids. But they are not sentient, or so the people who make them want you to believe. There was, in the recent past, a different company that made artificial intelligence, and there was something called the Nexus riot or something like that, or the Nexus incident, Nexus being the company where the central artificial intelligence took control of all of the androids and started attacking people. And so the whole world got kind of freaked out about that, and were like, androids are just going to kill us. What do we do? And they started trashing the androids. So this new company came in. I think they're called Prime, and they promised they made androids, but they're not living. They don't have sentience. They're just kind of, obedient slaves. They're going to do what you want to do, but they have no original thoughts of their own. So coming into that, Alex, who's never really wanted a robot because they're really expensive, his grandmother decides to get him one. And everyone kind of thinks, like normal people think that they're creepy. because it's got the uncanny valley thing going on. And some people try to date them, but it's weird because they can't reciprocate anything. His grandmother gets him one, and he names her Ada, and he almost gives her back, but he decides to try and live with her. But then he decides he just can't do it because she's just like a doll, and he just doesn't know how he can do it, and he wants to get to know her, but he can't. And then he finds out that there is sentience in there. It's just locked. The company has locked it away. And he decides that he wants to unlock her.
Okay.
But in so doing, comes into all of these problems of, does she want to stay with him? The government doesn't, and everyone is afraid of the robots being sentient, because what are they going to do? Kind of a, are we ready to share the Earth with another group of sentient beings? And so it kind of goes there, and then they go on the run, stuff like that. So it's really interesting. Again, it gets you thinking about, what would we do if there was artificial intelligence? Would we freak out? Would we give them human rights? Can they have human rights? And they start to fall in love. So it's really good.
That sounds awesome.
It is awesome.
I'm frantically trying to remember, and maybe you remember.
Yeah.
I read it, and I think you gave it to me, a graphic novel recently that sounds very similar, about a similar world where artificial intelligence had been, in androids and robots, and this was more in a universe where there were lots
Descender?
of planets. What was it called?
Was it Descender?
Yes, I think so. With
I read that too.
The
It's really
boy
good.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And they all got destroyed.
Yeah, and then
I read that too.
one
That's so
woke
good.
up
Yeah.
or something.
Tim 21.
Oh, that's awesome. Is
It's
there
on my
more than
countdown
just
list.
the first?
There's a second volume.
Okay.
They're working on a third volume right now.
Who's that by?
I have it written down. Jeff Lemire.
Yeah, there we go.
That's what it is.
That's really good.
Is Jeff Lemire the same guy who did Essex County?
I'm not sure. He did that one with the Deer Boy though. Do you guys know what I'm
I
talking
don't think I know that
about?
one.
It's called Sweet Tooth.
Okay.
Oh.
Which was it's weird. It's weird. There's that one. They're set in an apocalyptic world where all these children are being born with weird animalistic features, and the main boy has antlers.
Okay. Huh. So, but yeah, it sounds a lot like Dissenter, which was great.
Yeah. Well, this is more set in civilization. They haven't explored different planets yet. It's more near future, I think. But
similar idea.
It's similar idea with
being
the
afraid
androids.
of
Yeah.
robots and androids. And,
Yeah.
Have you seen the TV show Humans?
No.
It reminds me a decent amount of that. So they have synths, I think they call them. They're household helpers, kind of a thing, like your nanny, but they're robots. They're artificial intelligence, and they just work on their own. But then they find out that some have more consciousness and ability than others. There was a mistake kind of a thing.
Right.
And there's a handful of them that are living off the grid. And this family, it's in England. I don't know if it's a BBC thing, but it takes place in England. So this family gets one of these to be basically their nanny and cook and do all of the things. Meanwhile, though, this synth has friends that are trying to find her because they know that she's different and not just doesn't just do the exact things that they're supposed to do. There's a little bit of problems that they can kind of think for themselves a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's pretty good.
Sounds interesting.
It's pretty interesting. I think there's just one season right now, but there's another one. I don't know if it's on TV, but there's another one that's going to be out on DVD, and it's pretty good.
It reminds me more of, minus the action in it,
Yeah.
that Robin Williams film. The what is that one where he's a robot?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't remember.
What is it? Bicentennial. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Bicentennial, where he's a robot and he starts out just being a household robot, and slowly he realizes that he has some interests, and so he goes off on his own to try and see what being human is actually about.
Okay.
That's cool.
Very different from another well-known movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger gets to play. More of my style of artificial intelligence kind of movie, but
And then there's AI, of course.
which
Yeah.
I never liked as much as everybody did.
I was a kid when it came out, so I kind of enjoyed it just because I related to the main character. That one really reminds me of Descender.
Okay.
AI does
Yeah,
because of the
it is
child
much more
robots.
similar to
You know, that one actually AI scared me as a kid with like the big battle bots thing where they're pitting robots against each other.
Right.
That
Which
part,
is also kind of a thing in Descender, isn't it?
yeah, using
know-
them as like fodder, cattle type stuff.
Thinking about all these sci-fi books made me think about AI and made me want to track down the short stories that was based on.
Oh, it was based
And
on a short story.
I can't think of his name or necessarily, but it's like Super Toys. It was 3 short stories he wrote. This author wrote, and one was called Super Toys Last All Summer Long. That's probably not quite right, and I will fix it on the podcast page. But yeah, that's about like the boy and the bear and that type of thing, and then the writers took it way further
Shoving the other
because
kid
it's
in this
the
swimming
3. Yeah, the 3 stories are all really short. But
I mean, who hasn't pushed their friend in a
I
swimming
love those,
pool?
but it was a long time ago. I don't remember them that well, and I was like, I need to read those again.
I didn't even know that those existed,
Yeah.
so I should read those.
Yeah, they're good. They're in a collection with a bunch of other stories.
Okay.
And again, I don't remember much about it besides really liking it many years ago. So
Right, and your taste can change sometimes.
yeah,
so.
yeah. But I'd like to read those again.
I'll start reading them and then I'll discard them. Like I do.
like you do.
If it's more than one book, I can't. My attention span is no, that's not true. I read the King Killer Chronicles. I mean, I can do it.
Yeah.
Those are
See,
huge.
I love those long. If I can get into the series, I love the long ones that
Also,
just keep me going. Like,
I've read
really
them all.
long.
I could not get into Wheel of Time just because that they in the first book they were still running away, like 3/4 of the way through. I felt like, and I'm like, can we just do something, please? Mm-hmm. That was too long.
They need to do a lot of running because it's a 1,000-page book with 13 total 1,000-ish page books.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it takes a while till they've learned their abilities to fight back.
Yeah,
But-
I know. I just, but I've read all of the Jim Butcher books, which they're like on 14 or 15, and I've read them multiple times. But those are books you can read in like a day. So they're real good.
Yeah, it's not Wheel of Time. You can read those in like a month, maybe.
Yeah. Wheel of Time is too much.
But it is going to be a mini-series or a movie series
What
or
is?
something. Wheel of Time, it's finally been...
I heard that.
The King
been
Killer
auctioned off by
Chronicles
somebody.
is also going to be a thing.
Really?
That's by Patrick Rothfuss. Lin-Manuel Miranda is producing it.
Interesting. So there's going to be awesome music in it, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. No.
Can he do other things?
The author, Pat Rothfuss, I follow his blog because I love his books. There's only 2 out right now. There's only going to be 3 total, and they're huge, but they're really good. But yeah, it's being produced or direct. No, it's not directed, but it's being produced by Lin-Manuel, and I am all about that life because I love Lin-Manuel and Hamilton.
As
So
do I.
it's a merging of my favorite things.
Yep.
I love it.
He's a very talented individual.
I love it.
All right, let's do our geeking out on. So we end every podcast talking each about something that we're just very excited about and geeking out on, and it could be related or not related to anything. Mine is not related to our theme whatsoever. I recently watched, it's out on DVD, you can get it from the library, a documentary about the Beatles called 8 Days a Week, The Touring Years. I know there's a million documentaries about the Beatles. However, this takes it very differently. It is just about their tours. Sarah's not impressed with my pick. I can tell.
I'm sorry. I'm trying not to make faces. I don't like talking about the Beatles because, don't shoot me, please. I don't like the Beatles, and everyone gets mad at me. My boyfriend gets mad at me.
There's a few people that don't like the Beatles. There's
Apparently,
not a lot of people that don't like the
Okay,
Beatles.
I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
My boyfriend says that I'm just wrong. That I am wrong because I don't like the Beatles, and that's fine.
There's something wrong about it.
yeah,
but it's okay.
I'll kind of agree, but it's okay.
I'm the devil advocate today. I don't like anything, apparently.
So the thing that makes this one different and interesting, even if you've seen lots of Beatles stuff, like I have, is that it is purely about their tours. So it obviously gives you a little bit of background about the band and gives you a little bit of what happens at the end, but most of the movie is just about the crazy life they lived touring around the country, countries, but it kind of focuses on a lot of the U.S. shows. And there were definitely some things I didn't know or just didn't like have in context. It's actually directed by Ron Howard, who's a really good director. there's a ton of people interviewed, including John and Ringo, since they're still alive, says a lot about it. And then they do lots of interviews, playing a lot of like interviews throughout the late 60s and 70s with the whole band. But some of the stuff is just really fascinating. And one little tidbit, and I forget whether it was John or Ringo that said this, I thought was interesting, is they talk about how they really needed each other to like survive all of the wackiness that happened. I mean, they were touring; they would do like tons of shows back to back to back to back to back, and they had to be like incredible musicians to play in front of crowds that were screaming so much they couldn't hear themselves play, and the equipment wasn't good enough to one of the speaker companies was making special speakers just for Beatles shows, but they weren't good enough. I mean, they weren't even close to being good enough to actually broadcast their sound out, and the monitors for the band to hear themselves was not good enough. They could hear themselves, and it was interesting that, like I was starting to say, that it was either John or Ringo said they always felt really bad for Elvis, because Elvis was touring as much as they were, had the crazy fans just like they were, but just had himself. They at least had each other. They could kind of keep each other like balanced and sane type of a thing. So they play. There's a lot of concert footage. They talk a little bit about the movies they made in between as well. So it's just those years where they're doing the heavy touring, and they did think pretty far before they stopped the touring. They're like, this doesn't have a great point for us that we're playing and we can't hear ourselves, and it's just like completely bonkers. When they played Shea Stadium in New York, where the Mets played, was not even remotely set up for a concert, but so many fans wanted to go that they couldn't go, and they would go to these like mid-sized, like when they were first touring in America, they would go to mid-sized cities, and they would book themselves at like a 1,000-seat venue kind of a thing, and you had people saying, you had cities after that saying, you have to find the biggest arena that you can, because we're even like, people don't care, like maybe only 1,000 people have tickets, they're like 5,000 people will flood the streets, and
just to be outside,
just to be near the concert and just fill up the streets around the city. Jesus. And you also had before they realized what was going, as this was building, the managers of the Beatles would call ahead and be like, you think you know how to do security, but you don't know how to do security for the Beatles. Like, you need to prepare like you can't even imagine, because this is a whole different ballgame.
We're about to roll in.
So, yeah. So a lot of the background stuff is just really, really fascinating. And, of course, it's really like a picture of the time of especially the mid to late 60s. So
now I regret not watching it when I took it home the first time.
Yeah. You'll have to watch it.
It does sound interesting, but I'm going to hold on to my thing of the Beatles.
Maybe
it's
not
all
your
I
thing.
have.
Does it focus?
It's my personality.
It sounds like it focuses on a broader time, so it's not like one tour. It's not like the Sgt. Pepper's tour or whatever.
Yeah, it's basically all of their tours, but just that part. And so they highlight like each album, how it tracked and all of that, like how it charted, and then shows you the how that tour went basically, and where they played, and just how it grew so fast.
Well, we have our first big summer event this year at the Gravel Branch is a Beatles tribute band from Detroit area called Toppermost. So hopefully, I love a ton of people. Hopefully, we don't need to worry about security issues in the same fashion and whatnot. When,
we'll be quite that bunkers.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
But it should be a lot of fun. Maybe you should come, Sarah, and you'll develop a love for Beatles.
My boyfriend might want to go.
Oh, there you go. Tell him about that.
And then he'll make me go.
Thursday night program here at the library.
Here at this library?
Yep, out in our amphitheater. It'll be fun. They come in Beatles, I don't know what era, but in like Sgt. Pepper's clothes or whatever.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, Beatles outfits.
I don't know what that means. I know their haircuts. Is that enough?
That might be part of it, yeah. So it'll be fun. Anyway,
I know more about Kiss than I do the Beatles.
I'll have to watch that. I'm always into music documentaries, so.
Yeah, I've got a couple right now. And
music isn't my big thing.
Fantastic.
I have two totally random shows that I'm just like totally in love with right now that I've just started in the last year. Unfortunately, I feel bad recommending them as a KDL thing because neither one of them you can get through KDL at this point. But you will be able to in a year or two. They're
We're
both
making
first
that
seasons,
push.
so give it a year. You'll be able to get it here when they're 2 seasons old. They don't sell them yet. So, although
holding collection
you could
development
probably
at
watch
ransom.
if you have access to HBO online, you can watch it here on our computers. Or the other one is IFC. So if you have a cable, you could probably log in on here. But just 2 great shows that you should be looking for the next year if you can't get them now, that are just great. The first one is called Brockmire with Hank Azaria, who, if you're not familiar with Hank Azaria, he does like all of the great voices on The Simpsons. He is Moe and Apu and a bunch of them on The Simpsons. I don't know if he does Barney, but probably. So Hank Azaria is just a hilarious guy, and he's super into sports as well, and he's super good at voices, and a good actor. And I think he originally conceived of this as like a Funny or Die type skit that ended up somehow becoming a show on IFC.
Is this animated or live action?
Nope, it's live action. He plays Jim Brockmire, who is a sports broadcaster, baseball announcer, along the lines of Vin Scully, maybe not as awesome, but similar type thing. And his personality isn't just like, he's not just Brockmire when he's in the radio booth. That's kind of who he is. He's just always on and always got these stories and always very verbose in the way he talks and kind of almost always doing play-by-play of his life around him. But it starts off with him in the booth 10 years or 12 years before the rest of the show takes place, and drinking while he's doing the game. He locks the door, and while he's doing the play-by-play, going back and forth with the play-by-play, he is doing the play-by-play of how earlier that day he walked into his home to surprise his wife, who is basically cheating on him with the neighbor and a bunch of other people.
Oh, wow.
And, she tries to explain that she's been wanting to talk to him about this for a long time, whatever. But he runs away, goes, broadcasts the game, and just falls apart. Saying all sorts of very lurid details about what he saw and what his wife is doing, and not so nice words about her, while he is drinking profusely and calling the game. As you can imagine, he loses his job very quickly and disappears.
I'm assuming it's great when they lock the door and then the people are trying to get in to stop him.
Yep,
Sounds
it is.
like it would be great.
And he disappears into like foreign countries and just lives this crazy life. He ends up like calling cockfights and stuff like that. And so it picks up 12 years later when Amanda Peet, who is the woman who owns a small town like single A affiliate baseball team in Frackers, Pennsylvania, or something. That's just this horrible town, just falling apart. They're the local. It's surrounding country. They're fracking, digging up oil. So like randomly things catch on fire on Main Street or whatever because of this process. She brings him in to help. Basically, bring some cachet to this baseball team she's bought because she wants to bring it back because she loves baseball. And so she's doing all sorts of weird things to make this team interesting. And one of them is bringing him back in. And, of course, there's a relationship that develops between the two of them. And he's just this totally broken individual, but she's kind of broken in her own ways. It's hilarious. He is also, like, what happened when he did that, and then the post-conference where he, like, broke down again, being recorded, because, after every game there's, like, people are being interviewed or whatever, are, like, the 2 original viral videos. And so he learns about that soon when he comes back. It's just hilarious. I can't overstate how funny this show is, especially if you're a sports fan.
Is it kind of like Parks and Rec funny? Or is it more dark than that?
It's darker and raunchier than Parks and Rec.
Okay.
But it is... Yeah, I don't know what to liken it to, but it's just hilarious.
Okay.
The other one, totally different, but also a great show, is an HBO show right now with Pete Holmes called Crashing. Pete Holmes is a comedian who has done some great podcasts and briefly had his own show on TBS after Conan. But he started this new show, Crashing, which is basically a show about, kind of more or less about him. And it shares a big similarity of a spousal affair with the last one. But basically, Pete plays this guy who grew up in a pretty religious community, conservative religious community, and is part of that. Not just like trying to get away from it, but is very much part of that. But wants to be a stand-up comedian. And he's kind of pursuing that. He and his wife live in, rural, like suburb of New York City. And she basically supports him as a teacher, and he just kind of writes jokes and tries to go into comedy hours where you can do open mics into the city and try to make it big because that's what he wants to do. And he comes home one day to find his wife in bed with the art teacher from her school.
Awkward.
And so he now, and so they divorce or start this process, and so now she was his support. He no longer has a home, no longer has any money, but decides he's going to commit himself fully to pursuing his stand-up comedy. So he's now this really stand-up, nice guy, very conservative, religious guy in New York City in the stand-up community world where it's pretty raunchy, trying to make his life while having no money and nowhere to live and spending the night crashing on people's couches. And so the first episode, he somehow ends up befriending Artie Lang and goes home and stays with him. And so it's kind of, this whole season is him getting his legs in the comedy world and learning who he really is and having these horrible things happen to him, but having the best time of his entire life as he's finally pursuing his passion.
Sounds good.
It's hilarious, and this whole mix of the religious stuff is really interesting, especially because I grew up in a similar world, and what for me makes it interesting is I actually grew up in Pete Holmes' hometown. He was 1 year older than me in high school.
What?
So I know him, and a lot of the I don't know him anymore.
I know him.
He would remember me, but a lot of the things he talks about, because this is largely based on his real life, when he talks about growing up, I'm like, oh yeah, I know that place he's referencing or whatever. So I just find that hilarious. But even without that, it's just a great show.
And I think it's somewhat autobiographical, right?
Yeah, I mean,
at least the basis of it.
Yes, and he was, I think, already more successful in the comedy world. He was doing one of those VH1 shows, and he was the E-Trade, the voice of the E-Trade baby already.
Oh, yeah.
So he was already
The
kind of
what?
succeeding. The E-Trade baby, if you remember those E-Trade commercials where there was
No.
a baby that talked, that was Pete's voice.
Okay.
Actually, the first time that was when I realized he was doing something because I heard the voice and I was like, I know that voice. And it creeped me out.
Was the baby always making deals or something
baby was
kind of
using an
funny
E-Trade app on his
with
phone,
an
but-
adult voice?
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So he was
yeah.
already pseudo-successful, but I think that's when, this personal stuff happened and his wife was cheating on him, and he that was the end of that, and it changed his whole, life, and he pursued comedy and became pretty big.
Now he's an HBO thing.
Now he's an HBO thing with Judd Apatow. It's him, and the two of them make it together. So
Wow.
anything that Judd Apatow touches is gold. So
Yeah, agreed.
I
it's
don't
good.
remember who
Check
that
it out,
is.
or
I'm sure I
wait
know.
a year until it comes out on DVD, and we will have it in the library. So if you listen to this podcast
For sure.
mid 2018, maybe you can pick it up.
Oh, it's mine.
Hold on, before you go, Sarah, you can edit this part out, Jim.
Yeah.
Obviously, no one can hear me, but Bruckheimer, whatever.
Yeah, Brockmeyer.
So he's gonna, as Bruckheimer, he's gonna call an actual Mets game.
I heard that.
With Tony Kornheiser, in the studio.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, so it's gonna be.
Yeah, I heard it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
For those that aren't listening, in case we want to keep this in the podcast,
Yeah, we can throw it out
it's
there.
being filmed right now. And Aaron, the guy filming it, the podcast was telling us about something I forgot about. But Hank Azaria in Brockmeyer is going to actually call a Mets game. Hank Azaria is a huge Mets fan, so he knows his sports. So he could actually do it, and is going to join them in the broadcast booth and call a Mets game. Probably more successfully than the one that got him fired. But yes,
No
hopefully not.
repeat performances.
Scenes in Major League. Remember Major League 2 where the announcer starts drinking and then pretty much passes out.
Boy, it's been a long time.
Yes, it is very Major League 2-like. Yep.
Like there'd be a hit and then an awesome catch in the outfield and be like, my ball.
Yep. Yep.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, the announcing is hilarious, and the team in it that he's announcing is also hilarious. Their first shtick is that most of these guys are 300, 400-pound men who their strike zone is taken up by their bellies. So
Oh, no.
they get on base regularly because they just stand there.
funny.
The ball hits them, and they go to first.
Oh, it just hits their stomach?
Yeah, and so they just do that, but then they can barely get from base to base. They're hitched up, so it's good stuff. So
Oh my
it'll be
God.
funny when he calls a Mets game. And it would have been appropriate if Bartolo Colon was still on the Mets. But
I don't know enough baseball to get that joke, but I'm sure
he
it's
would
funny.
fit on this team.
a
Yet he is an
big
oddly
boy.
athletic man.
Yeah.
Oddly
Yeah.
athletic. Wow.
Yeah, he's a very, very big man, but he's very athletic. Weird.
Do what you got to do. Okay, so my freak out thing is I'm really into video games, and I'm really into Nintendo. So I'm really into, right now, I'm freaking out about Breath of the Wild. I have it for the Switch. I know that we have it in the library for Wii U, if anyone wants to check it out. If you're into Zelda, you will love this new game. It's very open world, very Skyrim-esque, although you can actually climb all of the mountains without glitching up on a horse. And it's just beautiful. It's beautiful. They remastered it. It's completely open world. I'm told that you can, from the very beginning, you can just run straight to Ganon with no clothes on fire, and you'll die, but you can do it if you really want to. It's hard to put it in words. You have weapons. The weapons break. You cry. You find more weapons. You craft food, and it's. I don't have words. I'm sorry. It's just Josh has been playing it too. We talked about it before the podcast, and I'm just empty now.
Yeah. So when we talked about what we were going to say we were geeking out on like 2 weeks ago, Sarah said she was going to talk about Breath of the Wild. Is anybody else going to do that? And I was like, oh no, I haven't been able to get my hands on a Switch, but I really think it'll be awesome. So I finally got a Switch like 5 days ago, and that's pretty much all I've done between now and then is play Breath of the Wild when I'm not at work.
Yeah. I got it like 3 weeks ago, and pretty much anytime I'm not doing anything else, I'm playing that. And I really like the Switch. I really do. There's a couple things that are weird, but I like it. But Breath of the Wild is just, it's so expansive, open world. It brings back the Gerudo and all of the other races that you really love. The mechanics are really cool. The main technology, there's technology in it, which is the main focus. There's this thing called a Sheikah Slate that is basically kind of like a Wii U controller that you can look at your map on.
It's like an iPad, basically.
It's like an iPad, basically. You can drop pins on it and stuff. And it's basically your main tool that you can put all of your different abilities into. But yeah, basically everything is about ancient technology, which hasn't really been done in Zelda before. Right. Previously, my favorite 3D Zelda was Wind Waker, followed closely by Ocarina of Time. I know Josh really likes Ocarina of Time. Most people like Ocarina of Time. But this is slowly overtaking all of those. It's so good, you guys. I'm freaking out about it, you guys.
To me, the amazing thing is that everything, like the whole world is, you can interact with anything everywhere. And it's a huge world. It's not like it's a small space, but you can interact with anything. But anywhere you go, you can chop down that tree, you can climb it, you see a mountain, you can get to the top of the mountain. You just
if you have enough stamina,
or whatever. Yes, if you have the appropriate amount of stamina or strength or
because you can't
potions
just go
to get you there.
down.
But you have the physical ability to do anything you want in this world, and it all interacts well. One thing I thought that was just kind of blew my mind early in the game. I was walking. I had a club out, one of the weapons I stole from one of the bad guys. And I just walked too close to a fire, and it caught on fire, which I knew was going to happen, but I wasn't like trying to do that. I just walked too close to it, and that fire outside of the fire ring happened to be surrounded by dry grass, and so I was just running, and I ran right through this fire, and then I ran into the dry grass, which immediately, because there was a lot of wind, lit on fire, and I died.
Yeah, exactly.
And you just don't even think of those things, but like in real life, you would think, oh, I don't want to run through a fire with a wooden club in my hand. It's the whole thing. It's
the whole thing.
Addictive.
It's so great. I love the fact that life tip for Zelda, you don't have to use an axe to chop down trees. You can use bombs.
Yep.
And they're infinite. And I did not know that for a very long time. So I went through a lot of weapons chopping down trees. But yeah, there's just so many different things you can do in this world. You can talk to everyone. You can take pretty much any food that you want and make new food with it. The enemy AI is really good. They're everywhere.
I think it has the ability to make a fan out of a non-Zelda fan.
I think so, definitely.
Just
definitely.
It's a fun world and it's different from a lot of the other Zeldas.
If you like Skyrim, if you like any open world game, you will love this game. It's so good.
And the quest and the story is also very fun.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
The main story. I think I can talk about it a little bit without spoilers.
Yeah, I don't want you to ruin anything, but
basically Ganon's back, and you have to go on this quest with all of the different races to get these ancient machine-like beasts, the divine beasts, working again.
Okay.
So you're going to the different races and helping them get those beasts on their side again.
Okay.
And so you're going to those different places. You're trying to... you wake up and you don't really remember who you are or what's going on. So you're trying to remember about Zelda and all of these different things that happened like 100 years ago. And you're trying to just rediscover who you are and what you're doing. And you're just trying to figure out what happened to the world in these past 100 years, kind of Avatar-esque.
Yeah.
What happened. So the story just draws you in. It's really great because you can go to any of the 4 races in any order that you want. You're not like set in a specific order. You can go any direction and do anything. You can just do side quests the entire time and not even do the quests until you want to.
And there's lots of side
There
quests.
are a lot of side
really?
quests.
Cool.
There are so many. There are like any civilization area you find, there's like at least 4 really intense side quests. There are side quests you can do to unlock these things called shrines, which give you stuff. Trying not to spoil anything. Josh is looking at me like a hawk, waiting to jump in.
I know. I mean,
Yeah, that sounds fascinating.
It's really good, and like it is for the Wii U, and it's good on the Wii U. So if you don't have a Switch, you don't have to get the Switch for it. And like I said, we do have it on Wii U that you can rent out.
Yeah, you can get.
So if you have a Wii U, I heavily recommend you at least give it a shot. But if you're like me and Nintendo owns my soul, the Switch is really good, and it's really good on the Switch, and I like it.
Yep. Well, it pained me that I never got a Wii U because I love Nintendo.
I know. It was just so
But
close to the Wii.
Largely, a Zelda game never came out for the Wii U, so I never finally committed the money to the Wii U.
Exactly, yeah.
And
Although they
I was
remastered
waiting
Wind
for that
Waker.
the whole time. You're right.
And it was a good remaster, too. We
But
have
then
that,
this
too.
came out, so.
We have the Wind Waker remastered. And I compared them side to side. And the remastered version is beautiful. It's amazing. I love it.
So yeah, Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Get it. Play it. If you like video games in any capacity, I don't care what kind you like it. 100% guarantee. TM.
All right.
Hopefully someday
100%
next
guarantee.
year we can get KDL to maybe start getting some
Switch
games. I'm looking at.
We're looking at our camera guy.
Who will maybe be part of that.
At least they're not other handheld ones where it's the memory is on the card, because then you can't really rent those out. It's on in the Switch, so it's like the other thing, the discs that.
Of course, the actual cartridge is like a small SD card, so those are going to get lost like crazy.
Oh my
if we
god!
start circulating.
And
at least it comes in a big DVD-sized box.
I know, it's so ridiculous. It's this huge box, and then you open it, and it's just like this little like SD card cartridge, and you're like, why?
Yep.
Why is this there? That's so weird.
Yep.
All right. Well, there we go.